At the family reunion, my aunt stood up from her lawn chair, pointed right at me and said, loud enough for the whole backyard to hear, "Don't bring your fatherless kid next time." Laughter broke out, not the kind that fades quickly, but the kind that spreads, people laughing because they didn't know what else to do. Some chuckled awkwardly. Others leaned into it. I froze. I looked at my son, Malik, 15 years old, standing beside the cooler, holding a soda can he hadn't opened. His eyes didn't move. His face stayed still. Not angry, not sad, just quiet. He didn't say a word in that moment. Neither did I. I wanted to. I wanted to defend him, to defend myself. But instead, I took a deep breath and swallowed every word that rose to my throat. The night went on. People joked, ate, pretended nothing happened. But when the check came at the end of the night, Malik stood up in front of everyone and said calmly, "It's already paid for. And so is your mortgage." And just like that, every single voice went silent. I hadn't been to a family reunion in 6 years, not since the last one, where my cousin's husband got drunk and accidentally called my son a mistake to my face. I left early and never looked back, but this time, Malik asked me to go. And when my son asks for something, I listen. "Come on, Mom, you don't have to talk to everyone," he said as we cleaned up dinner. "Just be there, for you, not for them." Malik is 15 now. He's not a little boy anymore, though sometimes I wish he still was. He's taller than me, voice deeper than I ever imagined, and he carries himself like someone who's seen too much too young, but he still calls me Mama when no one's around. I raised him alone. His father left when he was 4. One day he said he needed space. The next day he blocked our numbers. No child support, no birthday calls, no explanations. It hurt. But I learned quickly that a broken man can't build a family, so I built it myself. I worked 2 jobs most of Malik's life. Nursing assistant during the day. I cleaned offices at night. On weekends, I baked pound cakes and sweet potato pies for neighbors and coworkers. Some months, I stretched $50 like it was $500. Some nights, I cried into my pillow so Malik wouldn't hear me from the hallway. But he knew. He always knew. Still, I never let my struggle define him. He got good grades, taught himself to code online, helped elderly neighbors with yard work. Never asked for much. But this year, when he asked me to go to the reunion, he didn't have to say why. He wanted me to be seen, to be respected. Maybe even accepted. He wanted me to walk in as the woman who made it work, not the girl who got pregnant too young and ruined her life. So I said yes. The day of the reunion, Malik stood in the doorway holding my favorite necklace. "You forgot this," he said, clasping it behind my neck with steady hands. "Looks good." I smiled and fixed the collar of his shirt. "You clean up nice." "I got your back," he said. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until he said it. We drove across town in my old Corolla with the windows down and music low. Malik picked the playlist. Nothing loud, just smooth soul and soft drums. He didn't talk much. Neither did I. But the silence felt okay, like we were gathering ourselves before stepping into something we didn't fully trust. The reunion was held in Aunt Renee's backyard, like it always was. Folding chairs, mismatched tablecloths, and the same old radio playing 90s R&B. The grill smoke hung in the air. Kids ran around with popsicles and red-stained smiles. Everything looked familiar, but not friendly. A few relatives waved when we arrived. Some offered stiff hugs. Malik stayed close to me, his eyes scanning every face. He could feel it, too. The judgment dressed as politeness, the small talk that felt more like landmines. Aunt Renee spotted us from across the yard. She didn't smile, just raised one eyebrow and turned back to her conversation like she hadn't seen anything worth reacting to. That was her way. Always above, always watching. I tried to stay positive. I complimented someone's new hair color, helped a cousin carry plates to the table. I even laughed at a few jokes. But the whole time, I felt like a guest in my own bloodline. Malik stayed calm, polite. He answered questions when asked, nodded, smiled once or twice. But I could tell his guard was up. He's smart. He knows what people say when they think he isn't listening. As we sat down to eat, he leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. "You?" He gave me that same calm look he's had since he was 10. "Yeah, just watching." I squeezed his hand under the table. In that moment, I felt proud. Not just of him, but of myself. For everything I'd done to get us here, for showing up even when I knew it might hurt. But what I didn't know then was that hurt was coming. And it wasn't going to be a whisper behind my back. It was going to be a blow right to my face. And my son? He was ready in ways I never saw coming. The sun was starting to dip low, casting long shadows across the yard. A few kids were running around with water guns. Some of the older men were in a loud debate about football near the grill. And Aunt Renee was holding court at the long folding table like she always did. She never sat in the middle, always the end like a queen. And everyone, in one way or another, bent toward her. Malik and I found 2 seats near the edge of the group, away from the loudest voices. We ate our plates quietly, ribs, coleslaw, and macaroni that someone had definitely over-salted. Malik kept his head down, but his eyes moved, watching, listening. People made their way over, one by one. Some said hello. One cousin commented, "Wow, Malik, you got tall. You playing ball yet?" Malik just smiled. Another said, "Man, you really are his twin." Then glanced quickly at me, pretending she hadn't just brought up the father we both didn't talk about. I laughed it off. I'd gotten good at that. It was during dessert when it happened. The exact moment burned into my memory. We were finishing our food when Aunt Renee stood up from her chair and walked over, holding a paper plate stacked with banana pudding. She stopped right at our table, took a bite, and then looked straight at me. "You know," she said, voice loud and casual like it was just part of a conversation, "I don't know why you keep bringing your fatherless kid to these things." The yard quieted. Not all at once. It was like a slow turn, one person realizing what had just been said, then another, and another. She kept her smile, still chewing, still holding her plate. "This is a family reunion. I just think maybe next time you come alone, Janelle. Spare us the drama." A few people laughed. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away, but no one said anything. I sat there, stunned. My fork slipped from my hand onto my plate. I stared at her, searching her face for a hint of irony, a sign that maybe this was a sick joke, but there was none. She meant every word. She didn't care who heard. I looked over at Malik. He hadn't moved. He didn't flinch. He just sat still, his back straight, his face blank. His eyes were calm, but I saw the flicker in them, the spark of something quietly building. He didn't say a word. Not then. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tear into her, but my throat tightened. My heart pounded in my ears. I glanced around the yard. No one met my eyes. The silence wasn't protective. It was permission. They were letting it happen. I managed to say, "He's here because he's family, just like everyone else." Renee snorted and walked off without responding. She rejoined the table like nothing had happened. Malik stood up. For a second, I thought he was going to leave, and part of me was ready to follow. But instead, he walked over to the porch and sat down on the top step alone. I sat there for a moment longer, then got up and joined him. We didn't talk. He didn't look at me. I said, "You okay?" He nodded. "Yeah." She was out of line. She always is. I looked at him again. His hands were folded in his lap, but they were tight, clenched just enough to tell me he wasn't as calm as he looked. "She doesn't matter," I said. "What she said—" "She said it to make you feel small," he said, interrupting me gently. "Not me." That hit me harder than anything Renee had said. My son, 15 years old, had just seen through the whole performance. He understood that it wasn't about him. It never really had been. I realized then that Renee wasn't trying to hurt Malik. She was trying to remind me of my place, to cut me down in front of the people I grew up with, to remind them that in her eyes, I was still the girl who messed up, the girl who brought shame. But Malik saw it all. We sat on that porch step as the noise picked back up. Laughter returned. Someone turned up the music. A few kids screamed as someone pulled out a hose and sprayed the grass. The moment passed for them, but for us it stayed. Something had shifted. Something had cracked wide open, and neither of us would pretend we didn't feel it. The party didn't slow down. If anything, it got louder. People were back to cracking jokes and piling up second and third plates, but it felt like Malik and I were sitting on the edge of something the rest of the family refused to see. I thought about leaving. I really did. I looked at my purse, then at the car keys, then back at Malik, but he was still sitting straight, eyes fixed ahead, and something in his stillness told me to stay. He turned to me and asked, "You want to go?" I opened my mouth ready to say yes, but something stopped me. I looked at him, his face calm but unreadable, and I thought about everything he had been through. Every sideways glance, every missing birthday card, every time someone asked, "Where's your dad?" As if it was a casual question, not a wound. He didn't flinch anymore, but I knew it still cut. "No," I said, "not this time." He nodded, like he already knew that would be my answer. We walked back to the main tables, the way you walk back into a room after a fire alarm, aware, but quiet. I sat back in my chair. Malik stood behind me for a while, then slowly walked over to the dessert table, like nothing had happened. He poured himself some lemonade and took one of the cupcakes I had made for the event. No one bothered him. No one said a word. I watched Aunt Renee. She was sitting comfortably, laughing about something with Uncle Rick. Her voice was high and sharp, the same voice that used to yell at me for chewing gum in her house when I was a teenager. I remembered how she used to say, "I talk too much for a girl who had nothing to show for it." When Malik came back to sit next to me, he leaned in and said, "You know she's got a mortgage problem, right?" I blinked. "What?" "She took out a reverse mortgage last year and now she's behind. I heard Cousin Trish talking about it with Uncle Nate a few months ago. She's not telling anybody, but they're trying to figure out what to do." I didn't know what shocked me more, that he had paid attention or that he had remembered something so specific. "Why would you remember that?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because she looks down on people, but she's drowning too." I stared at him, trying to process what he was really saying. And? I started saving, he said. Last year. From the app I built. From that tech mentoring gig. I've been helping Miss Dorsey with her bills too, but I kept some aside, just in case. I couldn't find my voice for a second. In case of what? In case we needed to walk in somewhere and show them who we really are. I swallowed hard. You're 15. I'm ready. His voice didn't shake. His posture didn't change. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't looking for approval. He had already made up his mind. I knew Malik had been doing well with his coding. He'd been building websites since he was 12, creating small tools and apps, some of which actually made money. But I didn't realize how seriously he'd taken it, or how far ahead he'd been thinking. I sat there for a long moment, stunned not by what he had said, but by how sure he was about doing it. You don't owe her anything, I said. I know, he replied, but this isn't for her. That line stayed with me. He wasn't doing it to earn her approval. He wasn't doing it to make peace. He was doing it because he understood something I hadn't fully grasped. That dignity doesn't come from how others treat you. It comes from what you do when no one expects anything from you. So we stayed, we ate, we smiled, we blended in. But something was coming, and for the first time, I wasn't scared of it, because my son had already made a decision. He wasn't going to speak loudly. He was going to speak last. The sun had fully set, and the string lights around the backyard cast a warm glow over the tables. Most of the kids had gone inside. The music had softened, and the adults were easing into their second and third drinks. Conversations were slower now, more relaxed. People were starting to clean up plates and pack leftovers. Malik had stayed close to me, but not in a timid way. He moved with quiet confidence, like someone with a plan. Every now and then he glanced toward Aunt Renee's table, where she still sat with her wine glass, laughing loudly as if the earlier moment had never happened. When the server from the catering company returned with the bill, the energy shifted. Normally, at these reunions, the check would get split among the older adults. Sometimes someone offered to cover more, but it was always a bit of a show. Who would offer? Who would hold back? Who would pretend to reach into their wallet without actually contributing? This time was no different. The woman walked over and handed the bill to Aunt Renee, who always took the lead. She scanned the paper, squinted a little, and then stood up slowly, waving it in the air. All right, y'all, she said, raising her voice to be heard. Time to cough it up. We're all family until the check comes, right? A few people laughed. Some groaned. A couple of uncles reached into their pockets, pulling out 20s with fake reluctance. I glanced at Malik, who was already rising from his seat. He stepped forward, past me, past our table, and stopped directly in front of Aunt Renee. Every eye turned toward him. He spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. You don't have to split it. It's already paid for. Aunt Renee blinked, confused. What do you mean, it's paid for? Malik reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a printed receipt. He handed it to her, steady and calm. Paid in full, tip included. She stared at the paper. By who? I did. The silence dropped fast. A few cousins leaned in. One uncle took off his glasses to make sure he'd heard correctly. You? Aunt Renee said, eyebrows lifted high. Yes, ma'am. She tried to laugh it off. You're 15. What kind of allowance you getting? I don't get an allowance, Malik said. I built an app last year that helps small businesses manage inventory. A few people liked it. They paid me to customize it for their stores. I've been saving. The room was completely still now. He turned slightly, making sure everyone could hear him. I paid for the reunion dinner, and I also made a payment toward your mortgage. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I know you've been behind, he said. I don't know all the details, but I heard you took out a reverse mortgage. I heard you were close to losing the house. Someone near the back let out a quiet gasp. Aunt Renee's hand trembled just slightly as she folded the paper. Malik didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He didn't raise his voice. He simply added, no one should lose their home, not even someone who looks down on others. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. The kind of silence that comes when something sacred happens. I watched her face. Her confidence cracked. She looked around for someone to step in, to rescue her, but no one moved. Not a single family member came to her defense. No one clapped either. It wasn't that kind of moment. Malik turned and walked back to our table, shoulders square, hands in his pockets. I stood up as he passed me and touched his arm. That was all I could manage. He sat down again like nothing had happened. People began to whisper, but it wasn't gossip. It was awe. My cousin Brianna leaned over and mouthed, Did he really? I just nodded. Aunt Renee didn't speak for the rest of the night. She sat down slowly, folding her arms. She didn't say thank you. She didn't apologize. But she didn't say another cruel word either. And for the first time in my life, she looked small. Malik didn't do it for praise. He did it because he understood something deeper than most grown people ever do. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned. And sometimes it's earned in silence, through action. That night, he didn't just defend me. He showed them who we really are. The rest of the night moved slowly, like people were still catching up to what had just happened. There was no celebration, no round of applause, just a shift, something unspoken but undeniable. Conversations turned quieter. Some people looked at Malik differently, not with pity, but with something closer to respect. Others avoided our eyes altogether. Aunt Renee stayed seated. She didn't come over. She didn't call me aside. But for the first time in my adult life, she had nothing to say. That silence felt like a victory. We didn't stay long after that. I helped a few people clear the tables. Malik offered to carry the trash bags out to the side of the house. Cousin Brianna hugged me tightly and whispered, "I should have said something when she talked to you like that. I'm sorry." I told her it was okay, but I didn't say it to comfort her. I said it because I had let go of needing anything from people who only found their voice after the moment passed. When we got in the car, I expected Malik to talk, to explain, to unpack it all, but he just sat back, buckled his seatbelt, and looked out the window. Halfway home, I said, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said. "You really didn't owe her anything." "I didn't do it for her." I glanced over at him. His face was steady, but I could see the weight of the night in his eyes, the restraint, the hurt, the power it took to carry himself like that. "So why?" I asked. He thought for a moment, then said, "Because you never let her define you." And I needed her to see that. I didn't respond right away. My hands gripped the wheel. My eyes welled up. I blinked them clear and nodded, because if I tried to speak, I would have fallen apart. The boy I raised had become the man I prayed for. When we got home, we didn't say much. I kicked off my shoes. Malik went straight to his room. But before he closed his door, he paused and said, "I meant it when I said I got your back." I smiled. "I know." He closed the door, and I stood there in the hallway for a long time, taking it all in. The pain, the pride, the lesson that had unfolded not just for my family, but for me too. I thought back to all the nights I spent wondering if I was doing enough, if raising a child without a father would leave a permanent crack in his foundation, if the whispers and judgment from my family would eventually shape how he saw himself. But I was wrong. He wasn't cracked. He was carved. Every hard moment, every quiet sacrifice, every choice I made to rise instead of run had shaped him into something unshakable. That night at the reunion, Malik didn't get revenge. He gave grace, and in doing so, he gave me something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not because we changed anyone, not because Aunt Renee apologized or acknowledged her cruelty, but because we didn't need her to. We left with our dignity intact, and Malik made sure the story they told about us wasn't rooted in shame, but in strength. The next morning, I got a text from Cousin Trish. Whatever Malik did, it worked. Renee called me this morning, crying. She said nothing, just cried. Never seen her like that. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. This wasn't about tearing anyone down. It was about showing who we really are, with no apologies and no explanations. Later that day, I looked through old photos, pictures of Malik in second grade with a homemade science project, one of him helping me carry laundry at midnight, another where he's holding a cupcake with icing on his nose, smiling like he hadn't yet learned what the world expected of boys without fathers. And then I remembered something he said years ago after his dad missed another birthday. "It's okay, Mom. I got what I need right here." He meant me. But that night, I saw it clearly. I got what I needed too. Right here. In him. Thank you for watching our story. If this moment moved you, if you saw yourself or someone you love in it, I hope you carry this reminder with you. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need approval to be whole. And grace, real grace, doesn't come from who raised you. It comes from how you rise. If this story meant something to you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? And if you want more real, honest stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. From me and Malik, thank you for listening. Until next time.